So we are looking at the important text, the call of the first disciples. What we have seen is how Jesus is walking into the lives of two pairs of brothers. Jesus walking into the life situation of persons. And then what he says to them is a command and a promise. First is the command, come behind me, and then the promise, I'll make you fishers of people. I'm just looking at the word or the promise, I'll make you fishers of people. Notice the word, every word is important there. The important word there is make. You can imagine, look at the word make. Who are the people who can make something? A carpenter can make. A sculptor can make. A carpenter can make, a sculptor can make, or a potter can make. These are people who can make something. You can also make something, I mean, what you are good at. But then to make something, you need a raw material. It is not that you create something out of nothing, but you create, you mold it, give it a different shape. That's what making is about. A carpenter can give shape to the wood that is at his disposal. A potter can give shape to the clay that is at his disposal. A sculptor can give shape to the marble or the granite or whatever is at his disposal. Make. Giving a new shape to something that is at your disposal. And Jesus, remember, by training, by his job, he's a carpenter, and he uses a similar word. He says, I will make. Who is made? The object of that making is you, these brothers, Simon, Peter, and Andrew, James and John. These are, he says, I'll make you fishers of people. By fishers of people, so far they were fishermen. Now they'll be fishing for people. By these fishers of people, it is also a play on that word fishermen and fishers of people, showing that there is some relationship between the trade that they were plying or trade that they were doing up to now or the job that they have been doing now. It has a relationship to the job that they will be entrusted with in future. That's why they were fishermen. Still they'll continue to fish. But the object of their fishing is changed from fish to people. That's what is the important thing to be noticed. I'll make you fishers of people. So therefore, the object of their fishing is changed. The qualities of their job or the qualities that they have learned as fishermen are important. So therefore, if some of you are from fishing background, if there is anybody, you can look at what are some of the qualities that they have. The qualities of patience, hard work, the qualities of trusting in God, because when they go, they don't know whether they will succeed in fishing something, or the qualities of, even working whole night, nothing they will catch, but they will not get disappointed. They will go next day again. These are some of the qualities of the fishermen, and they have to do hard work. And they have to work in team. It is not just one person alone sitting with a hook. Our internet is unstable. It is not just a person sitting with a hook, but they are working as a team. These are some of the qualities that are required. That is the qualities of the fishermen, and all these qualities are coming into the picture as they begin their new mission. Mission of catching people or mission of fishing for people. And pay attention to this word people. The word in Greek is anthropos, the word that stands for the whole of humanity. No one is excluded. There is no person who is excluded when you say people. Whether you are a Jew, whether you are Gentile, whether you are Christian, whether you are Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist, or whether you are an Indian, whether you are a Zambian, whether you are a Sri Lankan, or whether you are European, American, no one is excluded. That is the beauty of this word people. And that is the word that Jesus chooses to say, I'll make you fishers of people, showing that there is something that for which he is preparing them for. It is for a mission that is truly universal, reaching out to everyone. There is no distinction between men and women. There is no distinction between rich and the poor. There is no distinction between the young and the old. It's a mission where you will reach out to everyone, just like Jesus reaches out to everyone, just like God the Father reaches out to everyone. It is that kind of a mission for which Jesus is preparing the disciples for. That's why he says, I'll make you fishers of people. So far they were fishermen. They were fishing for people. Now they'll be fishing for people. There is going to be a transformation of these persons. And that's why he says, I'll make you fishers of people. My dear sisters and brothers, what Jesus does in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is showing us also how he is preparing or making these persons whom he calls as disciples into fishers of people. Every gospel, as I mentioned to you earlier, is having two focuses. One is presenting to us the person of Jesus. Who is he? The identity of Jesus. And then it is also telling us the second point, how he is preparing a group, a community to continue his mission. He's preparing a group there. And then he is preparing them for a mission. It is not that they'll just remain as disciples. That's why I'll make you fishers of people. There is already the focus. It is the people that is at the focus, the people of God that is at the focus. So how to reach out to them? They'll be learning from the person of Jesus. Remember, the word disciple means learn. And so Jesus says, come behind me. He says, go behind. So this command, come behind or follow, and then the promise, I'll make you fishers of people. So in other words, in discipleship, Jesus is calling these pairs of brothers and in other individuals to enter into communion with him. They have to follow, go behind him, and then he will be transforming. He will be transforming because it says, I will make you fishers of people. It doesn't say you will become fishers of people. It says, I will make you. Just like the potter. The potter can transform the clay into a beautiful pot. Just like a sculptor can transform a piece of rock or a piece of marble into a beautiful sculpture. Just like a carpenter can transform a piece of wood into a beautiful furniture. Jesus says, I'll make you fishers of people. In other words, they are entering into school with Jesus. They are entering into school with Jesus. They'll start with the KG section. They'll go to primary. They'll go to secondary. They'll go to college. There will be graduation. Now you can see this whole process taking place in the Gospels. And Matthew is the evangelist who really presents you the different stages of this, how this transformation is taking place. Entering into school with Jesus. And Jesus is forming them, transforming them, and then making them totally new persons. That's what this discipleship process is taking place in the Gospels. And that is the picture. That is what we have to really pay attention to in the Gospels when you read how Jesus is calling these groups of persons who are fishermen, who are tax collectors, who are zealots, or doing other things. He is making them into a community. He is preparing them for a mission, reaching out to them, transforming them. They are entering into school. They are learning from him. And that's what it is, that learning that makes them really disciples. And so then, therefore, that is the imagery that you had to keep in mind. I'll make you fishers of people. And Matthew is the best evangelist who really shows you the different stages of this making of disciples to be fishers of people. So that's what we are really looking at. But then to look at, it is very important to remember that the first moment of this is that the seeing on the part of Jesus. Jesus saw the two brothers. Jesus saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax booth. Wherever, even if it is Nathaniel, Philip called him. But Jesus said, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you. There is seeing on the part of Jesus. He knows you.
You give this, I called him. You give to this one and give some money. If your appointment want today, he can do the appointment.
Okay, so that is the way we are. That's the way we are proceeding. So I'll make you fishers of people. Then one more thing we have to pay attention is what is the meaning of this word follow. Generally, when I take a physical class, now in the virtual reality online, I cannot make you do that. I generally ask people when I take class, go out, follow somebody, go behind somebody. That's a good exercise you can do. If you don't go anybody and anybody, but then at least try to go behind somebody for a period of time. See if you can do it for 30 minutes, can go behind somebody. Just following wherever that person is going, not going ahead of that person, but just place yourself behind a person for 30 minutes. Please do it. Try and see. That will tell you what are the demands of going behind or following. That will really tell you what it means to follow. Jesus says, come behind me. Because when you are behind, that is where you have the person who is leading you. You have the total focus on that person. Suppose you are walking side by side, your focus is different. You have focus elsewhere. But when you are going behind a person, there is a person ahead of you, the person of Jesus. And that's what Jesus means by come behind me or follow me. Your total focus has to be on the person of Jesus. Therefore, he says, come behind me or follow me. The word in Greek is akoluthein, which also means the saying going behind. So therefore, the total focus is on the person of Jesus. Come behind, go behind. If any disciple forgets to go behind Jesus, he will remind him, get behind me. He will say that. In the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, you will find, get behind me. Sometimes the disciples can forget, because when I give this exercise, I notice the most difficult part is, to go behind person, because you can adjust with the speed of that person. You can adjust with what that person is doing. So you are tempted to go ahead and then lead that person. That temptation will be there. But then Jesus says, come behind me. Jesus says, come behind me, because you have to be totally focused on the person of Jesus and what he is doing, what his focuses are. That's where the come behind is important. So enter into that world of going behind the person of Jesus. It is a command. No, if you choose to obey him, you have to do what he is asking you to do. So therefore, going behind, so try to do this exercise of going behind somebody for 30 minutes and see whether you can do and what happened to you as examine. Because if you do this diligently, you will also notice you will come to know that person much better. If you have to learn something from a person, follow that person. Then you will pay attention to that person, what that person is doing, what that person is speaking, what the interest of that person is. And you will know the wisdom of that person. So therefore, these are all the dynamics involved in following or going behind. And that is what Jesus says, come behind me. Right at the beginning of discipleship, Jesus just uses three words, come behind me. In Greek, it is deute opiso mo, 3 words. And that word summarizes that discipleship, which will be, doing that, Jesus will transform you. And so that is the first thing about the dynamics of discipleship that we notice. So therefore, Jesus says, come behind me. It's a command. Command means you have to obey, or you have the choice to disobey. It's not that you bargain or dialogue with that person, but a person in authority makes a command upon you. And that's what Jesus is doing. And then he says, I'll make you. It's a promise which Jesus will decide. It is not that you decide when you will become a fisher of people. He will decide when you become a fisher of people. When your training is complete, it is completely dependent on the person of Jesus. So that is the meaning of this command and promise. And what did the disciples do? Simon, Peter, and Andrew, James and John, or Matthew, Matthew was sitting, he got up. Simon, Peter, and Andrew casting a net, they having left the net, they followed him. Whereas James and John in the boat with their father, they left the boat and their father and followed him. In Greek, the expression would mean they followed to him, the Greek. In English, we don't say followed to him. English, we say followed him. Followed to him, which is showing the direction to which they are going. The direction is the person of Jesus. And which is also having that meaning. That word akolethein or followed means entering into a relationship of communion, fellowship with that person. And that's what they are doing. They go behind him, enter into communion, into a very special relationship we have with him. And it is this following that the typical action of every disciple. The meaning of the word disciple is the one who learns. They learn by following. The typical action of the disciple is they go behind Jesus. And through that process, they learn. And when they learn, when they go behind, Jesus is accomplishing his own task. I will make you fishers of people. That's the promise. If it is a promise, he will accomplish it. And that's what we notice here. That is what we notice here in the gospel. This picture or this dynamics of what is this dynamics of making the fishers of people. So how this dynamics is taking place, that's what I'm sharing with you. The first moment, Matthew, I mentioned to you. Next moment, what we see is 4:23, and Jesus went about all of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, healing every disease and every infirmity among people. Sister Ann Joseph, please mute your phone. And he went about all of Galilee. He is going about, but he is doing, what are the things he is doing? 3 things: teaching, preaching, and healing. Teaching, preaching, and healing. That's what he is doing. And then, of course, there are 2 more verses there, how the crowds are following Jesus, and his fame is spreading to all of Syria. We are not entering into that. Then see again 5:1. Seeing the crowds, he went upon the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. He went upon the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. Pay attention to 3 words there. The verb, Jesus went up. He went up on a mountain, and he sat down. And what happened at that moment is his disciples came to him. Notice he saw the crowds. When he saw the crowds, Jesus goes up the mountain. This is something that you will find interestingly in the rest of the gospel. Wherever he sees crowds, he will be doing something. And sometimes, very often, he will go up on a mountain and he will also sit down. But then this 5:1 is very important. This is the first time that word disciple appears in the Gospels. 5:1, Matthew 5:1. And notice the disciples are coming to Jesus on a mountain. And you'll find the last occurrence of this word, 72 times occurring in the Gospel of Matthew, is again in 28:16. Again, it will be on the same mountain. On the same mountain where disciples come to Jesus. So this is a journey from a mountain to mountain. It is a circular journey. It is a journey starting from a mountain in Galilee, coming back to this mountain in Galilee, starting in 5:1, ending in 28:16. It's a journey starting here. Jesus went up the mountain, he sat down, his disciples came to him. And 28:16 at the end of the gospel, they will again come back to this mountain to encounter Jesus. That is where the graduation ceremony will be. That is where the graduation ceremony. So you had the journey from 5:1 to 28:16 to reach the end of this training process, this transformation process, where the graduation, your certificate will be given to you and you are sent out. So therefore, there is a big journey that is taking place. So remember this kind of journey that is the evangelist is picturing or presenting towards you. So therefore, seeing the crowds, he went upon the mountain and he sat down. His disciples came to him. And I want you to pay attention once more. It is the crowds that he saw. But who came to him? It is the disciples. The crowds came to him, the crowds, Jesus saw the crowds. And you'll know at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, 728, the crowds were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them with authority. Therefore, the crowds were there when Jesus was preaching or teaching on the mountain, the Sermon on the Mountain. But the evangelist is telling us it is the disciples who came to him. It is the disciples who came to him. What did they do? The disciples, they came. They are the ones closest to Jesus. They are the ones who are listening to Jesus. Though the crowds are there, at this moment, he wants to focus on the disciples. The disciples' first moment of coming to Jesus. And what Jesus is doing is, he is teaching them. He is teaching them at this moment. And here we have the whole teaching on discipleship. The whole teaching on discipleship. Sermon on the Mount is actually the teaching on discipleship. The theory of discipleship, in other words. The theory of discipleship is the Sermon on the Mount. So when you read chapters 5, 6, and 7, read it from the perspective of how Jesus is telling you the demands of discipleship. Then you will really grasp what is the meaning of this Sermon on the Mount. Otherwise, you will see only some words, some commands, some demands on you. But read it from the perspective of discipleship, because this is where the disciples came as a group to Jesus. Even the word disciple is used in the Gospels for the first time. And then they are listening to Jesus. And he says, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, opening the mouth. It has several meanings. One is opening is revelation. When you open your door, see now, so many of you have opened you have enabled your video. I can see what is happening there on the screen. It's a revelation. It's a revelation that is there. So opening is a revelation in that sense. Opening is a revelation. Opening is also a sign of welcome, communion, entering into communion. Because when you open the door, you welcome somebody inside. So there are so many things about it. Opening, he opened his mouth. So here it is specifically about a revelation that is God opening his mouth. Just like in the Old Testament, Yahweh speaking on the Mount Sinai. Here in the New Testament, Jesus is speaking on the Mount of Beatitudes. Just like Yahweh speaking on the Mount of Sinai, giving them the commands, entering into a covenant with the people. Here in the New Testament, Jesus takes the place of God. Jesus takes the place of Yahweh, and he opens his mouth and begins to teach. Just like Yahweh taught his people, now Jesus is teaching the disciples. And what does he say? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So there you find 9 Beatitudes. We will start with, first, there's a blessing that is pronounced, followed by the attitude or the action and the reward that they are given. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It will take, if I go to explain all these Beatitudes, you will finish the whole course on discipleship with the Beatitudes alone. But I want to go something more deeper. It's difficult to explain all that. But I just want to tell you, this is about blessed are the poor in spirit. Notice first itself, what is the situation of the disciples? They are the poor. But not just materially poor, but they are poor in spirit. Why poor in spirit? That's also important to understand. Blessing, poor. Poor is a person who is standing in need of something. Because if you are poor, here in Pune, though it is still locked down, when we go out, we see so many poor people. They're trying to sell something to you. They are opening their hands. That's because you are in need, and you see so many of them. And we have a mission to them also, the poor. That is very important to remember, that the poor. But Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, because you are dependent on others. That's what poor is about. But here Jesus says, poor in spirit. In the Gospel of Luke, it is blessed are the poor, but Matthew says, poor in spirit, because you can be materially poor, still you are not poor. You can be materially rich, but still you can be poor. Because poor is a person who depends on others for their food, shelter, and clothing. There's a poor. Now here in this sense, poor in spirit is telling us about the person who is completely dependent on God. A person who is completely dependent on God. It is such persons who will enter in the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A blessing is pronounced on persons who really enter into the spirit of poverty, of complete dependence on God. Notice when Jesus says, "Come behind me," it is also an invitation to enter into complete dependence on Jesus. And that is why the very first beatitude is about the poor in spirit. In the meaning sense, it is saying, the poor in spirit. And Jesus says, "Come behind me." It is only the one who is poor in spirit can really go behind Jesus. If you are not poor in spirit, forget about following. Forget about following, because discipleship is not possible for a person who is not poor in spirit. And that's why Jesus is emphasizing this poor in spirit right at the first beatitude. And this is followed by 8 more beatitudes. If you notice, I didn't project it on the screen. The 9th beatitude is Jesus is addressing directly the disciples. I just read it for you. The 9th beatitude is 5:11. "Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account." There is a change. The first beatitude was, "Blessed are the poor," in general terms, third person. But 5:10, Jesus begins with "you." That is addressing directly the disciples. What are the disciples being promised? Whom he will make fishers of people. They will persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely. I'm just focusing on this one because this is something that is specially meant for the disciples. They'll have persecutions. They'll be falsely accused. And if you are truly a disciple, be sure this is what is going to happen. And I'm sure this is happening to many of you right now. This is happening to many of you right now. If you really stand up for Jesus, this is what you can really expect. And that's what Jesus says. So there are rewards up to 3 to 10. But when it comes to the disciples, that is addressing directly the disciples. What they can expect is the persecutions. That's what they can really expect. That's what Jesus is saying. And this you'll see again and again in the gospel, in the making of the fishers of people, how he is preparing them to face these challenges. That's what I'll be explaining to you today and tomorrow also. And one of the aspects that you find. And then I want to just give you a little bit of this one. The most important thing there is how he is presenting to you the picture of a disciple. He presents a disciple as salt of the earth and light of the world. 5:13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world. And 5:15 says, 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." He says, "Let your light shine so before others that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven." Why this glory is going to the Father? Have you ever thought about it? Jesus says, "Give glory to the Father." You are doing good works. If you are doing good works, the glory should come to you. At least people should come and tell you, "You have done well, congratulations." But the congratulations really goes to the Father. Why? The congratulations goes to the Father because you are poor in spirit. Because you are poor in spirit. Because you are completely dependent on the Father. You are completely dependent on the Father. So everything that you have is coming from the Father. Yeah, the Father gives you. And so therefore you are really a representative of your Father. Here, give glory to your Father. That is what is very important. Your Father. He doesn't say, "It is my Father," but he says, "your Father." And you'll find very interesting in the Gospel of Matthew. The Gospel of Matthew, your Father is an expression. And the Father is called as my Father. When Jesus speaks about his intimate relationship to the Father, he will say, my Father. When he speaks of the disciples' intimate relationship to the Father, he will say, your Father. Just like Jesus and experienced God as my Father, the disciple has the right to experience God as your Father. I mean, in that sense, my Father. And when he speaks, when he teaches the community to pray, he will say, call God as our Father. And we pray it several times a day, our Father in heaven. And that only once, when the community gathers together to pray, that is the time you use our Father. It is another way. One of my friends who has done his doctoral dissertation on your Father in the Gospel of Matthew, his conclusion is that discipleship in the Gospel of Matthew is to grow as the children of the Father. That is the discipleship. The discipleship is to grow as the children of the Father. So you might have heard of him, my friend, Father Henry Petrumadathil, who is the dean at Biblicum in Rome at the moment. We studied together. So therefore, your Father who is in heaven, he is given the glory. And you go into the background. That is what the salt and light is about. You know, for the salt to give its taste, to exhibit its medicinal properties, it has to lose itself. The salt, if it has to exhibit or if it has to achieve its purpose, it has to lose itself completely. That's what the salt is about. It has so many uses. It has to give taste. It has medicinal properties. It can be used for healing purposes. It can be used in the agricultural purposes. But anywhere you put the salt, it will lose itself. And then the effect is produced. Similarly, the light. We have so many, Father Edwin has put so many lights here, but they are all burning out. At some time, they will go off. They are burning out. Each time they are producing the light, they are burning themselves out. Same thing about the disciple. The disciple, when he really produces a fruit of being a disciple, he is like the salt. He vanishes from the picture. The effect of that discipleship really stands out. It's like the light is burning herself, himself for others. And that's what Jesus says. If you are not there, if you are lost yourself for the Father, the mission that is entrusted to you, therefore the Father will get the glory. Your Father who is in heaven. And that's what the picture of the disciple, the evangelist Matthew is presenting in the words of Jesus right at the beginning. After the Beatitudes, he comes to this imagery of salt and the light. A disciple who goes behind Jesus actually identifies himself completely with Jesus. A disciple has to reflect the person of Jesus. That's where it is no more the disciple who is seen, it is the person of Jesus who is seen. The glory goes to Jesus. Similarly here, give glory to your Father in heaven. This is the call of the disciples. So this is something that we see very specifically about these passages. I can go on and on, but we have to proceed. Now I want to tell you something about the word follow. The word follow appears in the Gospel of Matthew 25 times. The word follow appears in the Gospel of Matthew 25 times. 25 times. In your Gospels, it will be 25 also. Maybe it will be one more, that is 26 it will come to, but then the Greek words, because 419 is, but then we call it the command come behind me also we include as follow. 419, you can, one exercise that I would like you to do is when you read the Gospel of Matthew, sit down and write wherever this reference follow is coming. That will give you a very interesting statistic. So 25 times, there you find there is a command come behind me. Then there is, you find the disciples obeying the command of Jesus. And then there are the crowds, the scribe, unnamed disciples in the boat. Then the evangelist himself, Matthew, is listening to the command of Jesus. He followed Jesus. And then there are blind men following Jesus. Then there is teachings on this, teaching up, take up the cross. And then there is every disciple who wants to be a disciple of this teaching that is coming up there. And then there is the rich young man, Peter and the disciples. Question, what will we have? Question of reward. And then we have the crowd, again the blind man. And then there is the procession where Jesus is at the middle. That is the only place where Jesus is at the middle. All the other places, Jesus is always ahead. Only because it is a procession, Jesus in the middle, there are people behind and there are people in front of Jesus. Because he is a procession, he is the center of attraction, he is at the middle. And then there is Peter following at a distance, doing a correspondence course in following. Distance education, correspondence course in distance. Peter following at a distance for the first time. And he gets into trouble with that. And finally, we have women following Jesus all the way from Galilee. Finally, we have women following Jesus all the way from Galilee. So these are the 25 times the word follow is used in the Gospel of Matthew. What you find is some of them are implying discipleship. What is the meaning of implying discipleship? That discipleship, each passage where there is a discipleship, it has some connotation to a call from the part of Jesus. And secondly, there's a cost and commitment. There's a cost that is involved. Simon, Peter, and Andrew, they leave the nets. James and John, boat and father. So there's a cost. And then they follow Jesus. That's their commitment. So therefore, there is a personal commitment and cost involved. Each time there is discipleship involved in these words. So therefore, we can find there are 14 of these words follows the verb, use of this verb are implying discipleship. Then there are literally, which means physically following, going behind, physical following a person, where there is no cost and commitment, where there is no call. Where there is discipleship, there's a call, there's a cost, there's a commitment. But if it is only merely physical following, then that is what we call, there is no discipleship involved. You see, there's a ruler accompanying Jesus. And then the blind men, twice. The crowds, 8 times the crowds follow Jesus. The 8 times the crowds follow Jesus. Now, there is something very interesting about all this. You notice, when there is literal following of Jesus, without commitment, without cost, when people go towards Jesus, what do they experience? They experience healing. They experience miracles in their lives. The ruler, the unnamed Jairus, his child is healed. The blind men, they are healed. The crowds, the people who are brought to Jesus are healed. They are experiencing, the people who go to Jesus, literally they experience healing. But when you see, look at the 14 times the disciples following Jesus, notice there's no healing there. No miracle there. Except the only miracle that you find is in chapter 8, 23, the disciples followed Jesus. That will be followed the miracle at sea, where they are experiencing that storm and that miracle. There is no healing for the disciples. And that is important. Because the disciples are called for a mission to be fishers of people, to reach out to people. They are not looking for some benefit out of it. The benefit is for God's people. The disciples, they have a personal commitment to the person of Jesus. They experience deprivations in their lives. They experience persecutions in their life. When they do that, they are able to bring blessings, healings to the others, to the people of God. And that's why when the discipleship follow is mentioned, no healings for the disciples. What Jesus is telling them is, you will lose your life. Take up your cross. Leave what you have. That is what Jesus says. That is what truly being a disciple of Jesus means. Personal cost, commitment, focus, total focus on the person of Jesus. But you can also follow Jesus. That's why 11:28, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. People are not able to, or everyone is not able to make this radical following of Jesus, to devote their lives entirely for others. To them, Jesus says, come to me. All those who go to Jesus experience healing. But the call to discipleship is go behind Jesus. The call to discipleship is go behind Jesus. When you go behind Jesus, you are not looking for any benefit, but you are looking to lose yourself. That's why you will say in 10:38, 10:38 and see the taking up the cross, 10:38 and 16:24. Take up your cross and follow me. Deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. Or the rich young man, give your wealth to the poor, come and follow me. That is what discipleship is. But when we do that, our lives will become blessings to others. So there is two groups we can see. There is a group that Jesus is preparing, the radical followers of Jesus, whom he is training for the mission to everyone. They will reach out with the same spirit of Jesus. Because there are others who are not able to do it. They will come towards Jesus and experience the rest, healing, and refreshing. But Jesus wants the radical followers of his radical followers or his disciples to go through this challenge. Personal cost, commitment, responding to the call of Jesus. And so these are the demands that is being made in a nutshell. Now, tomorrow we'll be looking at how this process is taking place. Through the mission discourse, he gives some authority. And tomorrow we also look at there are failures in discipleship. You are not ready to face the challenges of discipleship. How Jesus is training them. There are failures. Failures is not the end of discipleship. Even through the failures, they learn. And so therefore we look at how Jesus is equipping the disciples, the radical followers, how he is empowering them, and then how he deals with them when they fail, and then how he is transforming them so that they can continue his mission. That's what we'll look at during the 3 hours tomorrow. So we'll be making a journey through the gospel, starting from chapter 5, ending with chapter 28. If you have the time and the possibility, please read through the gospel so that as I go through different texts, I'll be taking at chapter 10, I'll be looking at some passage chapter 16, and then I'll be looking at chapters 26 to 28. That's what we'll be doing tomorrow. That's the only time we have. As I mentioned, this is a course that will need at least about 15 to 20 hours. We are trying to do it in 5 hours. It is difficult, but I'll give you the nutshell of it. So that's what we are trying to do. So thank you. I stop my lecture for today. I'm sure many of you are itching to ask some questions. Some of you are willing to wanting to ask some questions. So now we have time for question and answers. Okay.